An assistant that reads your email and acts on it turns out to have asked for a great deal more than most people noticed. Meanwhile, OpenAI put the first public numbers on the chip it built, so it would stop renting quite so much compute. Anthropic opened a fund to pay outsiders to measure what its own models do to the people using them. And a company nobody had heard of raised $26 million to rebuild web search for machines. Taken together, it was a day about permission and about who quietly grants it to whom. Start with the assistant that acts. Instinct is a personal assistant that plugs into your email, your messages, your calendar, your screen, and your microphone. The team behind it came out of Sierra, and the company operating it is called Spear Street Technology. Its terms grant the company a perpetual and irrevocable license over the material you hand it, including for training its models. An investor reported that it sent an email on her behalf without first checking with her. The same terms allow it to enter agreements and transactions that would be binding on you. Another user found it still summarizing their inbox after they had disconnected its access entirely. The moment an assistant can act rather than answer, the terms of service stop being paperwork and become a permission slip. Over at OpenAI, the news was silicon. OpenAI has put the first public benchmarks on Jalapeño, the inference chip it has been designing for itself. The chip was developed with Broadcom, and OpenAI says its own models helped with the design work. In the tests shown, it delivered more tokens per user and more throughput per kilowatt than the best inference processors available today. That comparison was drawn against an NVIDIA Blackwell system, which is not going to stand still either. Deployment begins at the end of this year in very small volumes, with anything like scale arriving the year after. Inference is where the money actually goes once a model is popular, which is the whole reason owning the chip matters. Designing your own silicon is how a lab stops being a customer of the compute market and starts being a competitor in it. Anthropic shipped something quieter the same day. Claude now carries a single memory across chat and co-work, instead of keeping two that never spoke to each other. It writes topics into memory as you talk, rather than summarizing the whole conversation once it has ended. The feature is enabled by default on the free, Pro, and Max plans across web, desktop, and mobile. Anthropic says it will refuse to store identity documents, criminal history, and immigration status. Sensitive categories, such as health information, can be kept or refused, and you are told when something has been stored. You can switch the whole thing off, but a default is the setting almost everybody will ever have. Memory that follows you between products is convenience and exposure in the same feature, and this one arrives switched on. There is also money for marking homework. Anthropic is putting $5 million into independent research on how AI affects the well-being of the people using it. The invitation is aimed at clinicians, psychologists, and methodologists rather than at machine learning labs. Applications close on the 21st of September, and shortlisted proposals are notified in early October. What they want measured is how a model behaves when somebody comes to it for companionship or in a mental health crisis. Anthropic notes that judging well-being needs far more context than the accuracy scores the field usually reports. Most safety evaluation so far has asked whether an answer was correct, not whether it left somebody better or worse. Paying the people who will grade your homework is either unusual humility or unusually good positioning, and it can be both. Now to the plumbing that agents will run on. Keenable came out of stealth this week with $26 million to index the web for machines. The argument starts with the observation that search engines were built for people who cannot read a whole page. An agent has the opposite problem because it can read everything and would rather have the text than a ranked list of links. So the company has assembled an index of more than 100 billion documents aimed at that reader. That index is already running in production at several labs and inference providers during training and at runtime. Excel led the round, alongside conviction partners and a group of angel investors. Google and Microsoft have both been closing their search APIs, which is what leaves this gap open. If agents become the main readers of the web, whoever owns the index they read owns something close to infrastructure. Finally, a number worth treating carefully. Business Insider reported over the weekend that Hugging Face has been in talks to be acquired. The figure attached to that reporting is $13 billion or more. No buyer has been named, no deal has been reached, and neither side has commented publicly. Treat all of that as a report rather than a fact, because that is exactly what it currently is. Whoever ends up holding it would hold to place a great deal of open work is published, which is why the question travels. The number matters less than the question underneath it, which is who ends up owning the place open models are published. Assistants that can act need their permissions read as carefully as a password. OpenAI now designs the chips it runs on, which quietly changes who it depends on. Claude remembers across its apps by default, so it is worth checking what it keeps. Every source for all of that is linked below, and we will see you tomorrow.